What happens when the person who loved you the most finally stops fighting for you? The narcissist believes the empath will always stay, always forgive, always return. But the moment the empath walks away in silence, the illusion of control begins to collapse. This is the painful truth narcissists never see coming. The loss of the one person who truly cared becomes the beginning of their emotional downfall, while the empath rises stronger, wiser, and finally free. There comes a moment in life when the empath grows tired of carrying the emotional weight of people who only know how to take. For too long, the empath believes love can heal selfishness, patience can soften cruelty, and loyalty can awaken appreciation in the heart of the narcissist. They continue chasing approval, chasing peace, chasing the hope that one day their sacrifices will finally be valued. But the greatest transformation begins the moment the empath stops running after what continually destroys their spirit. The narcissist survives on attention the way fire survives on oxygen. Every emotional reaction, every apology, every attempt to fix the relationship becomes fuel for their sense of control. The empath often does not realize that their constant effort is what keeps the unhealthy cycle alive. The more they explain, the more they forgive, the more they endure, the stronger the narcissist feels in their power. Yet the day the empath chooses silence over pleading, distance over chaos, and self-respect over emotional slavery, the balance begins to shift in a dramatic way. When the empath stops chasing, something unfamiliar enters the narcissist's world: emptiness. For the first time, they are forced to sit alone with the consequences of their own behavior. The attention they once demanded disappears. The emotional energy they once consumed is no longer available. The person who constantly fought to keep the connection alive has finally walked away with their dignity intact. And suddenly the narcissist realizes they were never as powerful as they believed. Their power depended entirely on someone else sacrificing their peace. This is why the empath's departure creates such a deep collapse inside the narcissist. It is not always love they miss. It is the loss of control, the loss of validation, the loss of the emotional mirror that constantly fed their ego. The empath represented comfort, certainty, and endless emotional supply. Without it, the narcissist begins to feel the hollow space they spent years trying to escape through manipulation and domination. But for the empath, this painful ending becomes the beginning of rebirth. The energy once wasted on convincing someone to care can now be invested into personal growth, confidence, purpose, and inner peace. The empath discovers that their kindness was never weakness. Their compassion was never foolishness. Their mistake was simply giving priceless energy to someone incapable of honoring it. Life changes when you finally understand that chasing people who refuse to value you only delays your destiny. Every moment spent begging for respect is a moment stolen from building the life you truly deserve. The strongest decision an empath can make is to walk away without hatred and without revenge. Because true power is not found in destroying others. It is found in refusing to destroy yourself for people who never deserved your loyalty. And once the empath realizes their worth, they become unstoppable, because nothing frightens a narcissist more than losing access to the person they thought would never leave. There is a kind of power that speaks loudly through anger, revenge, and confrontation. But there is an even greater power that says nothing at all. The silent exit is one of the most powerful decisions an empath can ever make, because it removes the one thing the narcissist depends on most: control over your emotions, your attention, and your energy. A narcissist builds their confidence on the belief that no matter how badly they behave, you will remain emotionally attached. They become comfortable manipulating your kindness because they mistake your patience for weakness. Every time you return after disrespect, every time you explain your pain, hoping they will understand, they convince themselves they have permanent authority over your heart. They begin to believe they control not only your emotions, but also your identity and your future. But something extraordinary happens when the empath reaches emotional exhaustion. One day the arguing stops. The need to prove innocence disappears. The endless explanations fade into silence. The empath no longer feels the urge to fight for a connection that only produces suffering. Instead of creating another emotional scene, they quietly detach and begin choosing peace over chaos. This silent decision becomes the very thing that shatters the narcissist's illusion of control. The narcissist expects tears. They expect begging. They expect emotional reactions, because reactions give them reassurance that they still matter deeply within your mind. What they never expect is calm distance. Silence becomes terrifying to them because silence cannot be manipulated. A quiet exit gives them no stage to perform on and no emotional energy to consume. For the first time, they are left alone with uncertainty. And uncertainty is the enemy of every controlling person. The empath often believes their silence means weakness, but in truth it is evidence of emotional mastery. Anyone can scream in anger. Anyone can seek revenge. Yet it takes extraordinary strength to walk away with dignity while carrying the pain of disappointment inside your soul. The silent exit is not surrender. It is self-respect finally becoming stronger than emotional attachment. In life, your greatest breakthroughs often begin with the painful decision to stop forcing people to recognize your worth. The moment you stop chasing validation from those who refuse to value you, you reclaim the energy needed to build your future. Your mind becomes clearer, your confidence returns, your spirit begins healing from years of emotional confusion. You realize that your purpose in life was never to rescue people committed to misunderstanding you. The narcissist collapses internally because your departure exposes a truth they tried desperately to avoid. They were never truly powerful. Their influence only existed because you continued participating in the cycle. Once you remove your presence, their illusion weakens. The control disappears. The emotional dominance fades, and they are forced to confront the emptiness they spent years hiding behind manipulation. Never underestimate the strength of walking away quietly. Sometimes the most life-changing statement you will ever make is the one you never speak aloud, because silence has a way of communicating self-worth more powerfully than 1,000 arguments ever could. There comes a defining moment in the life of every empath when exhaustion transforms into awakening. After giving endless chances, endless understanding, and endless emotional energy, the empath finally realizes that sacrificing peace for toxic love is not loyalty but self-destruction. In that moment of clarity, something powerful begins to rise within them. They stop doubting their value. They stop apologizing for their sensitivity. They stop shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. And the instant an empath reclaims their power, the narcissist begins to lose everything they once depended upon. The narcissist thrives in environments where confusion controls the relationship. They depend on emotional imbalance to maintain dominance. As long as the empath feels guilty, insecure, or desperate for approval, the narcissist remains in a position of control. They feed on reactions, emotional dependency, and the constant effort of someone trying to repair what they continue breaking. But the moment the empath becomes emotionally independent, the entire foundation of manipulation begins to collapse. An empowered empath no longer chases validation from people who refuse to appreciate them. They begin protecting their energy instead of constantly pouring it into empty places. Their silence becomes stronger than arguments. Their boundaries become stronger than guilt. Their confidence becomes stronger than fear. This transformation terrifies the narcissist because they realize the person they once controlled is no longer emotionally available for manipulation. What the narcissist truly loses is not just a relationship. They lose access to unconditional emotional supply. They lose the comfort of knowing someone will endlessly forgive their behavior. They lose the admiration, attention, patience, and emotional labor that kept their ego alive. Most importantly, they lose the illusion that they are untouchable. For years, the empath may have believed they were weak because they loved deeply and cared sincerely. Yet the truth is that empathy is not weakness. It is emotional strength guided by compassion. The real weakness belongs to those who exploit love instead of honoring it. When the empath finally understands this truth, they begin rebuilding their life with a new level of wisdom and self-respect. The most successful people in life understand that energy is one of the greatest forms of wealth. Where you invest your emotions determines the quality of your future. If you continuously invest your spirit into toxic people, you slowly drain your confidence, creativity, and purpose. But when you reclaim your power, you redirect that energy toward growth, discipline, healing, and personal achievement. Suddenly your mind becomes sharper. Your vision becomes clearer. Your future no longer revolves around surviving emotional chaos. The narcissist struggles when the empath rises because they depended on the empath remaining emotionally trapped. They expected endless access to your attention. They expected your loyalty to survive every betrayal. They expected your fear to keep you connected to them forever. But nothing shakes a manipulative person more than watching someone they underestimated become confident, peaceful, and impossible to control. Your greatest victory in life is not proving your worth to those who fail to see it. Your greatest victory is recognizing your own value so deeply that you never again abandon yourself for temporary acceptance. Because the day an empath fully steps into their power is the day the narcissist begins losing the very foundation. They built their false strength upon. There is a moment in life when the empath finally becomes tired of carrying pain disguised as love. After enduring emotional manipulation, endless disappointment, and silent heartbreak, something inside them awakens. The person who once fought desperately to save the relationship begins to understand a powerful truth. No amount of love can heal someone determined to remain emotionally empty. And the day the empath walks away becomes the day the narcissist faces the greatest fear they have spent their entire life trying to avoid. The narcissist's greatest fear is not anger, revenge, or confrontation. Their greatest fear is abandonment by the very person who fed their sense of importance. Deep beneath the mask of confidence lies a fragile need for validation, control, and emotional dependence. The narcissist may appear powerful on the outside, but much of that power is borrowed from the attention, loyalty, and emotional energy of others. This is why they work so hard to keep the empath emotionally attached. The empath often gives endlessly because they believe love means patience and sacrifice. They continue hoping their kindness will eventually inspire change. They tolerate disrespect because they see potential instead of reality. Yet every time they ignore their own pain to preserve the relationship, they unknowingly strengthen the narcissist's belief that they will never leave. The narcissist becomes comfortable believing they can manipulate without consequences because the empath always returns. But one day everything changes. The empath no longer argues. They no longer explain their feelings, hoping to be understood. The emotional exhaustion becomes greater than the fear of letting go. Instead of fighting for the relationship, they begin fighting for themselves. This silent transformation becomes the beginning of freedom. When the empath finally walks away, the narcissist is forced to confront something they cannot control. The emotional supply disappears. The admiration fades. The constant reassurance they once depended on is suddenly gone. For the first time, they are left alone with the emptiness they spent years avoiding through manipulation and domination. The illusion of power begins collapsing because the person they underestimated has chosen self-respect over emotional captivity. Life always changes the moment you stop abandoning yourself for the comfort of others. The empath discovers that walking away is not weakness but courage in its purest form. It takes strength to leave behind familiar pain and step into uncertainty with faith in your own worth. The greatest victories are often invisible at first because they begin internally before they appear externally. As the empath heals, their energy returns. Their confidence grows stronger. Their purpose becomes clearer. They realize they were never meant to spend life proving their value to someone incapable of appreciating it. The same heart that once tolerated suffering becomes the heart that now protects peace with wisdom and discipline. Meanwhile, the narcissist struggles with the reality they never expected. They believe the empath would always stay, always forgive, always sacrifice themselves for the relationship. Losing that certainty becomes emotionally devastating because nothing unsettles a controlling person more than watching someone they once manipulated become impossible to control. And in the end, the empath's departure becomes more than an ending. It becomes the beginning of a life built on self-worth, freedom, and inner power, while the narcissist is left facing the very emptiness they spent years trying to escape. There is a painful truth many people discover too late in life. The people who love the deepest are often the ones most taken for granted. The empath gives their heart with sincerity, patience, and loyalty. They stand beside others during moments of weakness, offer understanding during moments of failure, and continue loving even when they receive very little in return. But when the narcissist loses the one person who truly cared, something inside them begins to collapse emotionally because genuine love is far more valuable than they realized. The narcissist often spends years believing power comes from control, manipulation, and emotional dominance. They become addicted to attention and validation because it temporarily hides the emptiness they carry within themselves. They convince themselves that loyal people will always remain available no matter how poorly they are treated. This dangerous belief creates arrogance. The narcissist begins viewing the empath's kindness as weakness instead of recognizing it as one of the rarest strengths a human being can possess. What they fail to understand is that sincere care cannot be replaced easily. Many people can offer attraction, temporary excitement, or surface-level attention, but very few people genuinely care about another person's soul, growth, and well-being. The empath continues loving even when exhausted. They continue encouraging even while emotionally wounded. They continue seeing greatness in others long after others stop believing in themselves. That kind of emotional investment is priceless. The collapse begins when the empath finally reaches their limit and walks away. Suddenly, the narcissist no longer has access to unconditional support. The person who once listened patiently, forgave repeatedly, and stayed loyal through chaos is no longer there to provide emotional comfort. The silence becomes unbearable because it forces the narcissist to confront the very emptiness they spent years avoiding. At first, the narcissist may attempt to hide their emotional collapse behind pride or anger. They may pretend not to care. They may seek attention elsewhere to distract themselves from the loss. But deep inside, they recognize something important has disappeared from their life. They lost someone who truly believed in them despite all their flaws.